Wait for me. I will marry you. The sentence rose in Ryan Hale's mind with brutal clarity. Not as a memory softened by time, but as a voice his own, younger, reckless, spoken on a night he had sworn he would never forget. His hand stopped mid-motion. The girl stood in front of him, small and still, her dark eyes lifted toward his face. On her finger was the ring. Ryan stared at it longer than was polite, longer than was safe. The metal was dull, worn thin at the edges, too large for a child's hand. It did not belong to her age or to this moment or to the life he had built. And yet it belonged to him. His chest tightened. "Mia," he said, surprised by how steady his voice sounded. May I see that ring again?" The girl's brows drew together. She hesitated, instinctively, pulling her hand back. The way children did when they sensed an adult had noticed something important. "You're not going to take it, right?" she asked. "No," Ryan said quickly. "I promise. I just want to look." The word promise landed between them, heavier than he intended. Mia studied his face, searching for something she must have learned to look for early: truth, maybe, or danger. After a moment, she slipped the ring off her finger and held it out to him, resting it carefully in the center of her palm. Ryan took it with hands that no longer obeyed him. The world narrowed. The engraving struck him like a blow. Two names carved unevenly into the inner band. The letters were shallow, worn smooth by years of skin and sweat and quiet endurance. Ryan and L. He did not need to read the rest. His vision blurred. The sounds around him, voices, movement, the low hum of a public space, fell away. All he could see was that ring. The proof he had once existed as someone else, someone poorer, someone braver, or so he had believed, someone who made promises without understanding their cost. He closed his fingers around the ring just for a second, as if grounding himself. "When did your mother give this to you?" he asked. Mia shrugged. "A long time ago. She said I should keep it safe." "Did she tell you where it came from?" Mia nodded. "She said, my dad made it." The word hit him square in the chest. "Your dad?" Ryan lifted his eyes to her face. He saw it now, not all at once, but in fragments: the familiar shape of the eyes, the set of the mouth, a resemblance that had been invisible only because he had never allowed himself to look for it. "What did he tell her?" Ryan asked quietly. Mia tilted her head, thinking. "She said he was poor back then. He was leaving to go work far away." She paused, then added, careful to get it right, "He put the ring on her finger and said something important." Ryan's throat closed. "What did he say, Mia?" She looked down at the ring in his hand, then back up at him. Her voice was small but precise, as if she had repeated these words many times before, preserving them the way one preserved something fragile. He said, "Wait for me. I will marry you." Ryan felt the air leave his lungs. The ring slipped from his fingers and landed softly on the table between them. He didn't reach for it. He couldn't. His body had gone rigid. Every muscle locked in place by a truth too large to absorb all at once. That was his promise," Mia continued. "My mom says he didn't know about me when he left. She says he was scared." "Not bad." Mia hesitated, but she also says promises don't stop hurting just because people disappear. Ryan's vision darkened at the edges. He stared at the ring as if it might accuse him. Speak his name aloud. Demand an explanation he did not have. And your dad? He asked, though part of him already knew the answer. What do you know about him? Mia's shoulders lifted in a small shrug. I never met him. The words were simple. They destroyed him. He never came back, she added. Not bitter, not accusing. Just stating a fact. My mom waited for a long time. Then people started laughing at her, so we left. Ryan closed his eyes. For years, he had told himself he had lost contact, that circumstances had intervened. That time had simply moved forward without him noticing. The lies had been easy to live with because they were abstract. This was not abstract. This was a child standing in front of him, carrying the weight of his absence in her careful speech and quiet composure. Behind Mia, several steps away, he sensed movement. A presence he had avoided acknowledging. He looked up. The woman stood there exactly where she had been before. She did not step forward. She did not speak. Her face was calm, but her eyes held everything he had refused to face for years. Recognition passed between them, silent and devastating. Ryan looked back at Mia. That promise, he said slowly, choosing each word as if it might shatter, that was a serious one. Mia nodded. I know. He swallowed. And that ring, it matters. Yes, she said. That's why I don't like taking it off. Ryan reached for the ring again, this time carefully, reverently. He placed it back into Mia's palm and gently closed her fingers around it. You should keep it, he said. It belongs to you. Mia slipped it back onto her finger, relief flickering across her face. Then she looked up at him, studying him with a curiosity that made his heart ache. Do you know him? She asked. Ryan could not answer. The question hovered between them, heavy with possibility, with fear, with a future he had never allowed himself to imagine. Behind her, the woman took a step forward, then stopped. Ryan stood there, unmoving, his gaze fixed on the child who had just spoken his broken promise back to him in her father's voice. In all his life, he had never felt so completely undone. And he knew with a certainty that settled deep into his bones that nothing he had built, no fortune, no reputation, no carefully managed distance would protect him from what came next. Ryan Hale did not remember how the event ended. Later, people would tell him he stayed longer than scheduled, that he shook hands, posed for photos, even laughed at something a councilman said. His assistant would mention that the press coverage was excellent, that donations spiked within the hour. All of it sounded plausible. None of it felt real. What Ryan remembered was the ring. He remembered the way Mia's small fingers had curled around it after he returned it to her palm, as if she were protecting something alive. He remembered the exact phrasing of the promise she had repeated, his promise, spoken with the careful reverence of a child reciting a story she had been told since before she could read. Wait for me. I will marry you. Those words followed him long after the crowd thinned and the volunteers began folding tables. They echoed in the quiet of the black car as it pulled away from the community center. In the hum of traffic outside the tinted windows, In the measured voice of his assistant outlining the rest of the day's schedule, Ryan did not interrupt. He stared straight ahead, his hands folded tightly in his lap, his jaw clenched just enough to keep himself composed. For 40 years, he had lived by a simple rule. If you did not look back, nothing could catch up to you. That rule had failed him. At the penthouse, he dismissed everyone. The housekeeper paused, concerned, but Ryan waved her off. He needed silence, not the curated quiet of luxury, but the kind that left room for thoughts to speak. He loosened his tie, set his jacket aside, and walked to the window overlooking the city. The lights below were steady, confident, indifferent. He had built himself into this skyline, brick by brick, deal by deal, believing that success was a form of absolution. It wasn't. Mia's voice replayed in his mind, calm and unembellished. My mom says people break promises when they're scared. Ryan closed his eyes. He had been terrified back then. Terrified of staying poor. Terrified of being invisible. Terrified that love would trap him in a life he could never escape. So he had chosen distance. Telling himself it was temporary. Telling himself he would return once he was someone worth coming back as. He never had. The realization settled heavily in his chest, not as a sudden revelation, but as a truth that had been waiting patiently for him to stop running. An image rose unbidden, a younger version of himself standing at a bus station. Duffel bag slung over his shoulder, the ring warm from his hand where he had just placed it on hers. He remembered the way she had smiled, quiet, trusting, unwavering. He remembered how certain he had felt, how convinced he was that intention alone could overcome time. He had not considered the cost of silence. Ryan turned away from the window and sat heavily on the couch. He pressed his palms together, fingertips aligned, a posture he had adopted in negotiations when the stakes were high. This was higher than any boardroom. 6 years old. The number circled in his mind. Relentless. Mia's age was not an abstraction. It was mornings and school lunches and scraped knees. It was birthdays without a father. It was questions that went unanswered because asking them hurt too much. And the woman, he had seen her, finally seen her, standing behind their daughter with a restraint that spoke louder than anger. She had not stepped forward. She had not demanded recognition. She had allowed Mia to speak, to tell the truth in her own way. That restraint was not weakness. It was strength forged by years of disappointment. Ryan rose and walked to his desk. He opened a drawer he rarely touched and removed an old leather notebook. The pages were yellowed, the writing inside his own, messy, hopeful, written by someone who believed the future was something you could design if you wanted it badly enough. He flipped through until he found the entry he had never reread. I'll come back for her. I won't forget. His throat tightened. He had not forgotten. He had buried. If this story touched something inside you, take a moment to let us know. Press like if you felt the weight of that promise. Leave a comment and share what this moment meant to you where you are watching. And subscribe to the channel for more stories about truth, responsibility, and the courage to stay. There was a knock at the door. Ryan stiffened, then exhaled when he recognized his assistant's voice. He did not invite him in. Cancel tomorrow's meetings, Ryan said through the door. There was a pause. Yes. Another pause. Longer this time. Understood. The footsteps retreated. Ryan sank back into his chair. For the first time in years, there was no agenda, no immediate solution, only a question that demanded more than money or strategy. What did responsibility look like now? He knew what it was not. It was not a public statement crafted by lawyers. It was not a discreet transfer of funds or a trust set up in someone else's name. Those were tools he had mastered, and they would not save him here. Responsibility meant presence. The thought terrified him more than any risk he had ever taken. Ryan stood and moved toward the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face. He studied his reflection, silver beginning to thread his hair, lines at the corners of his eyes earned through long nights and harder choices. He looked every bit the man the world believed him to be. But, beneath that image was someone else. A man who had made a promise he did not keep. A father who had been absent without knowing he was one. I didn't know, he said aloud, testing the words. They sounded thin, inadequate. Ignorance did not erase consequence. It only delayed accountability. His phone buzzed on the counter. A message from his assistant, likely confirming cancellations. Ryan did not look at it. Instead, his mind returned to Mia's face when she had asked simply, "Do you know him?" He had not answered. He would have to. Not with words at first, with action. Ryan dried his hands slowly, deliberately. He knew where to start. Not with grand gestures, but with truth. He would need to speak to her mother, not as a benefactor, not as a public figure, but as the man who had left. The thought made his chest ache. For years, he had believed courage was the willingness to take risks in pursuit of success. He was beginning to understand how wrong that definition had been. Real courage was staying. He returned to the window one last time, looking out at the city he had conquered. Somewhere below, Mia and her mother were moving through a life shaped in part by his absence. He could not rewrite the past. He could not reclaim the years he had lost. But he could stop disappearing. The decision settled quietly without drama. Not a resolution, but a beginning. And beginnings, he knew now, were far more dangerous than endings. The next morning, Ryan Hale woke before dawn, the way he always did when his mind refused to rest. For years, mornings had been his advantage. While others slept, he planned. While the city was quiet, he made decisions that would ripple outward by noon. Today the quiet felt different. It was not productive. It was heavy. He sat at the edge of the bed, hands resting on his knees, staring at nothing. 6 years. That number returned again and again, attaching itself to ordinary thoughts. 6 years of first steps he hadn't seen. 6 years of birthdays he hadn't acknowledged. 6 years in which a child had learned to speak, to read, to understand disappointment without him. Ryan rose and dressed without calling for assistance. No tailored suit this morning. He chose dark jeans, a plain sweater, and an old jacket he hadn't worn in years. The choice felt deliberate, though he wasn't sure why. Perhaps some part of him understood that appearances mattered less when the truth was this exposed. He poured himself a cup of coffee and didn't drink it. Instead, he stood at the kitchen counter, watching the steam rise, and let memory take him where he had avoided going for decades. He remembered the woman as she had been then, not frozen in the past, but alive within it. Strong hands, capable and steady, a quiet humor that surfaced when she thought no one was paying attention. She had never asked him for much. That, he realized now, was what had made leaving so easy. There had been no dramatic confrontation, no ultimatum to anchor him in place, only trust, and he had taken it with him when he left. His phone buzzed again. This time he picked it up. There were messages from his assistant, his legal team, his publicist, all unread. He scrolled past them and opened a different contact, a private investigator he had worked with years ago. Back when he believed every problem could be solved discreetly. Ryan stared at the name for a long moment before locking the screen. No, this could not begin with surveillance or reports. That would only repeat the same mistake, distance disguised as caution. He needed to be seen by them, by her. Ryan set the phone down and exhaled slowly. The weight of the decision pressed against his ribs, making each breath feel earned. He had negotiated billion-dollar mergers with less hesitation. But those deals had never required him to admit fault. Admitting fault changed the balance of power, and for once that mattered. Later that morning, he returned to the foundation office, not to work, but to retrieve something. The building was quiet, most of the staff still operating under the assumption that he would be unreachable for the day. Ryan moved through the halls unnoticed, which suited him. In his office, he opened a drawer and removed a slim folder. Inside were notes from past charity events, demographic summaries, follow-up plans. At the bottom was a handwritten list compiled by volunteers, families who had arrived early, families with children under 10, families needing additional support. He scanned the names until one made his chest tighten. Mia. Beneath it, written in a different hand, was her mother's name. Ryan closed the folder. This was not coincidence. This was proximity. He had been close enough to help for years without ever realizing who needed him most. By the time he left the building, the city was fully awake. Traffic hummed. People hurried past with coffee cups and headphones, carrying lives that felt suddenly fragile to him. He had spent so long believing stability was something you constructed alone. He was beginning to see how wrong that belief had been. The drive took him across neighborhoods he rarely visited. The architecture changed. The streets narrowed. The storefronts grew smaller, more practical. Ryan watched from the back seat, resisting the instinct to retreat into his phone. This was part of it, too. Bearing witness. The car stopped a block away from the address listed in the foundation file. Ryan told the driver to wait and stepped out alone. The air was cold, sharp against his face. He pulled his jacket closer, grounding himself in the sensation. The building was modest, brick, worn, but clean. Nothing remarkable, and yet his pulse quickened as he approached it, each step heavier than the last. He stopped across the street. For several minutes, he did nothing. He watched the entrance, the windows, the small details that made a place feel lived in. A potted plant by the door, a child's drawing taped to the glass, proof of a life that had continued without him. This was where the stories converged. Ryan thought of Mia's voice, her careful phrasing. He thought of the way she had shielded the ring when she felt his attention linger too long. A child who had learned already that precious things needed protecting from men like him. The realization burned. He crossed the street. Inside the building, the stairwell smelled faintly of cleaning solution and something warm, domestic food maybe, or fabric dried too long indoors. Ryan climbed slowly, counting steps without meaning to. Each floor felt like a threshold. At the door, he stopped again. He raised his hand to knock. It hovered there, suspended between intention and consequence. For the first time in his adult life, Ryan Hale did not know what the outcome would be. He did not know if the door would open or if it did, whether he would be welcomed or turned away. He had no leverage here. No control, only accountability. He knocked. The sound was soft but final. Footsteps approached from inside, small ones, then larger. Ryan's heart began to race. Each beat loud in his ears. The door opened. Mia stood there, her eyes widening in surprise. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she looked past him as if checking something behind his shoulder and back again. "You came," she said. It wasn't a question. Ryan swallowed. "Yes, I will too." She studied him the way she had before, weighing his presence with the seriousness of someone far older than her years. Then without fear, she stepped back. "My mom's here," Mia said. "She's making breakfast." The words were simple, ordinary. They felt monumental. Ryan stepped inside. Behind Mia in the small kitchen, the woman turned slowly. When she saw him, she did not gasp or stiffen. Her expression remained calm, but something shifted in her eyes, recognition, pain, and a resolve that had taken years to build. Ryan met her gaze and felt the full weight of what he had come to face. He opened his mouth to speak, and for once he did not lead with an explanation. "I'm here," he said. It wasn't enough, but it was true. The kitchen was small, warm, and lived in. That was the first thing Ryan noticed. Not the woman, not the way her hand tightened briefly around the wooden spoon she was holding, but the space itself. A narrow table pressed against the wall, two mismatched chairs, a pot simmering gently on the stove, releasing a familiar grounding smell, oatmeal, maybe with cinnamon, the kind of breakfast that prioritized care over presentation. Mia moved past him with quiet confidence, setting her paper bag from the charity event on the counter. She slipped the ring off her finger and placed it beside the bag deliberately, as if this was where it belonged when important conversations happened. The woman turned the stove off before finally facing him fully. Up close, time revealed itself more clearly. Fine lines at the corners of her eyes, a strength in her posture that had nothing to do with youth. She looked older than he remembered and at the same time exactly the same. Ryan's chest tightened. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was steady, not cold, not warm. Controlled. "Good morning," Ryan replied. Silence stretched between them, thick, but not hostile. Mia climbed onto one of the chairs and swung her legs, watching them both with an attentiveness that made Ryan acutely aware of every word he might choose. The woman gestured toward the other chair. "You should sit." He stayed. The chair creaked slightly under his weight. A mundane sound that felt out of place against the gravity of the moment. He rested his hands on his knees, unsure where else to put them. This was unfamiliar territory. There was no script. I wasn't expecting you, she said. I know, Ryan replied. I didn't want to call. She nodded once. That would have been easier. Yes, he admitted. But easier isn't appropriate. Mia's eyes flicked between them. My mom doesn't like it when people say big words instead of what they mean, she said matter-of-factly. The woman exhaled slowly. Not quite a smile. Not quite a reprimand. Mia, it's okay, Ryan said softly. He turned to the girl. You're right. Mia seemed satisfied with that. The woman folded her arms loosely, not defensively, but protectively. Why are you here, Ryan? Hearing his name spoken by her again sent a dull ache through him. It anchored him to a version of himself he had tried to forget. I came because of the ring, he said. And because of Mia. Her gaze sharpened, though her voice remained even. Those two things are connected. Yes, he said. I know. She studied him for a long moment, searching his face the way one does when the truth matters more than politeness. Ryan did not look away. Finally, she spoke. Did you know about her? No, he said immediately. I didn't, Lena. Mia leaned forward slightly. You really didn't? She asked. Ryan met her eyes. No, if I had known, I wouldn't have stayed away. The woman's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. That's a comforting thing to say, she said. It doesn't change what happened. No, Ryan agreed. It doesn't. He took a breath, steadying himself. I'm not here to rewrite the past. I can't. I'm here because I need to acknowledge it. All of it. Mia glanced at her mother. He looked scared. The observation was not cruel. It was accurate. The woman placed a hand on Mia's shoulder. Go wash your hands. Breakfast is almost ready. Mia hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave. Then she slid off the chair, picked up the ring, and slipped it back onto her finger before heading toward the sink. When they were alone, really alone, the silence changed. You left, the woman said quietly. And then you disappeared. Ryan nodded. I did. You promised me you'd come back. I know, Lena. I waited, she continued. Not because I was weak. Because I believed you. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. I was young. I thought leaving was temporary. I thought success would make everything easier. And did it? She asked. He looked around the room. At the chipped mug by the sink, at the carefully folded dish towel, at the life she had built without him. No, he said. It didn't. Mia returned, drying her hands on her shirt. She climbed back onto her chair and rested her chin in her palms. My mom says you didn't know about me, she said. But she also says you didn't try very hard to find her. The woman's breath caught just slightly. Ryan felt the truth of that statement settle heavily on him. She's right, he said. I didn't try hard enough. Mia considered this. Why not? Because I was afraid. Because I didn't want to face who I'd been. Because admitting I was wrong felt like losing everything. Instead, he said, because I made a bad choice. Mia nodded, accepting that answer in the way children sometimes did, not because it was complete, but because it was honest enough. The woman looked at him then, really looked at him. What do you want now? She asked. Ryan did not answer immediately. He had asked himself that question all night, and the answer still frightened him. "I want to be responsible," he said finally. "Not just financially. Not from a distance. I want to know my daughter." Mia's head snapped up. "Your daughter?" "Yes," Ryan said, his voice firm despite the tremor in his chest. If that's something you're willing to allow." The woman's expression did not soften, but something in her eyes shifted, an internal calculation, careful and measured. "This isn't about what you want," she said. "It's about what's best for her. I understand. And I won't let you come in and out of her life when it's convenient." "No, I wouldn't ask to," he said. "If I'm here, I stay." Mia swung her legs slowly. "That sounds like another promise." Ryan met her gaze. "It is." The woman held his eyes, searching for arrogance, for entitlement, for anything familiar and disappointing. What she found instead made her look away. "We'll see," she said quietly. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't rejection either. And for Ryan Hale, that fragile space between the two felt like the most honest beginning he had ever known. The first agreement they reached was not spoken out loud. Ryan understood at the moment Mia's mother turned back to the stove and resumed stirring the pot. Her movement steady, unhurried. He was allowed to remain in the room, but not to lead it. He could listen. He could observe. He could not reclaim ground he had forfeited years ago by simply showing up. Mia sensed it, too. She slid off her chair and sat on the floor near the table, arranging the donated food items into neat rows as if they were pieces of a puzzle. She worked silently, but her presence filled the room, anchoring the adults to something real. Breakfast was served without ceremony. 3 bowls, 3 spoons. The woman placed one in front of Ryan without comment, then sat across from him. Mia climbed back onto her chair and began eating, humming softly to herself. For a few minutes, no one spoke. Ryan took a spoonful and nearly winced. It wasn't bad. It was simple: oats, cinnamon, a touch of brown sugar. The kind of food made out of habit and care. Not indulgence. He hadn't eaten something like this in years. "This is good," he said. The woman nodded, neither pleased nor dismissive. "It's filling." Mia looked up. "My mom makes it every morning. She says it helps you think straight." Ryan met the woman's eyes briefly. "She's right." Silence returned. But it felt different now, less brittle, more watchful. When Mia finished, she carried her bowl to the sink and washed it without being asked. Ryan noticed the ease with which she did it. The quiet competence. Children learned responsibility early in households where no one else was coming to save them. "I have school," Mia announced. The woman checked the clock. "You do." Mia slipped on her shoes and grabbed her backpack. She hesitated, then turned to Ryan. "Are you leaving?" she asked. Ryan opened his mouth, then stopped himself. He looked to her mother. "That depends," the woman said calmly. "Mr. Hale has some things to figure out." Mia nodded, accepting this answer with more grace than most adults. She stepped closer to Ryan and held up her hand. "The ring," she said. "You can look at it again later if you want." Ryan felt his chest tighten. "Thank you." She smiled briefly, then turned and followed her mother toward the door. Ryan watched them go, standing alone in the small kitchen. The quiet that followed was heavier than before. It carried expectation. The woman returned a few minutes later. Her coat folded over her arm. She set it on the chair and leaned against the counter. "You should go," she said. "I know," Ryan replied. She studied him. "This isn't something we rush." "No," he agreed. "I won't. You can come back," she added. "But not like before." He nodded. "On your terms." "On Mia's," she corrected. He accepted that without hesitation. When he stepped outside, the cold air felt sharper, more bracing. The driver straightened when he saw Ryan approach, but Ryan waved him off and walked a few steps down the block instead. He needed to think without walls around him. For the first time since he'd built his fortune, he was acutely aware of how little practice he had with patience. Deals closed quickly. Problems were resolved efficiently. Waiting had always felt like weakness. Now waiting felt like respect. His phone buzzed. This time he looked. A message from his legal counsel marked urgent. A headline preview from a news alert followed close behind. Someone had leaked details about the charity event, about the delay, the unscripted interaction. The girl. Ryan exhaled slowly. The reckoning would not stay private for long. It never did, when power and truth collided. But as he stood there replaying Mia's voice, her careful recounting of his promise, he felt something unfamiliar settle into place. Resolve. He pulled out his phone and typed a single message to his assistant. "Clear my schedule for the foreseeable future. I'll explain later." Then he slipped the phone back into his pocket and looked up at the building one last time. He had spent decades building a life designed to keep him untouched. Now he was choosing something far more difficult. To be present, not as a benefactor, not as a savior, but as a man learning far too late what his absence had cost and what his presence might still mean. The door upstairs opened briefly. Mia leaned out, waving once before disappearing again. Ryan raised his hand in return. It wasn't a promise, but it was a beginning. The first week passed without ceremony. Ryan did not return the next morning, or the morning after that. He understood instinctively that showing restraint now mattered more than enthusiasm. Presence, if it was to mean anything, had to arrive without pressure. Instead, he sent a message. It was not written by lawyers. It was not polished. "I would like to see Mia again. Only if and when you think it's right. I will follow your lead." The reply came hours later. Saturday. 2 hours. Mia decides. Ryan read the message 3 times. Saturday arrived with a gray sky and the kind of cold that settled into the bones. Ryan arrived 10 minutes early and waited across the street, hands in his pockets, reminding himself not to pace. The building looked exactly as it had before, ordinary, solid, untouched by the magnitude he assigned to it. At precisely 10 o'clock, the door opened. Mia stepped out first, bundled in a red coat that was slightly too big for her. The ring was on her finger. It always was. She spotted him immediately. "You came early," she said, not accusing, just observant. "Yes," Ryan replied. "I wasn't sure how long it takes to be on time." She considered that. "My mom says being early is polite. Being late is rude. Being exactly on time means you planned." Ryan nodded. "Then I planned." That earned him a small smile. The woman followed Mia out, locking the door behind her. She carried herself with the same quiet authority Ryan had noticed before. There was no warmth in her expression, but no hostility either. "We're walking," she said. "There's a diner 3 blocks away." "That's fine," Ryan said. Mia slipped her hand into her mother's as they started down the sidewalk. Ryan walked beside them, careful not to crowd, aware of how unfamiliar this formation was. "So," Mia said after a block of silence, "what do dads usually do?" The question was direct, disarming, unanswerable. Ryan thought for a moment. "I don't know yet," he said honestly. "But I think they listen." Mia nodded slowly, filing the answer away. "My mom listens, even when I talk too much." The woman did not comment, but her grip on Mia's hand tightened briefly. The diner was warm and smelled like coffee and fried eggs. A place frozen in time. Vinyl booths. A counter worn smooth by decades of elbows. Ryan had eaten in places like this long ago. Before everything changed, they slid into a booth. Mia took the inside seat next to the window. Ryan sat across from her. The woman sat beside Mia, her body angled slightly between them without being overt. The waitress appeared with menus and water. She glanced at Ryan, recognition flickering briefly, then moved on without comment. "Can I get pancakes?" Mia asked immediately. "Yes," her mother said, "with fruit." Ryan watched the exchange quietly. There was no tension here, no performance, just routine built from repetition. "I'll have coffee," Ryan said. "And whatever she's having." Mia looked at him. "You don't like pancakes." "I do," he said. "I just forgot." She accepted that with surprising seriousness. While they waited, Mia traced circles on the tabletop with one finger. The ring clicked softly against the laminate. "You didn't answer my question before," she said. "Which one?" "About my dad," she replied. "You didn't say if you knew him." The woman's posture stiffened slightly. Ryan met Mia's gaze. This time he didn't look away. "I do," he said. Mia leaned forward. "Is he nice?" Ryan's chest tightened. "He's complicated." She frowned. "That doesn't sound good." "It means he makes mistakes," Ryan said. "Big ones." Mia considered this. "My teacher says everyone makes mistakes. But grown-ups are supposed to fix them." "I do." The words landed with quiet force. "I think your teacher is right," Ryan said. The food arrived. Mia attacked her pancakes with focus and enthusiasm. Ryan stirred his coffee, watching the steam rise, grounding himself in the mundane. After a few bites, Mia looked up again. "Are you going to leave?" she asked. The woman froze. Her eyes stayed on Mia, but her body went very still. Ryan did not answer immediately. He had learned quickly that hesitation mattered. Empty reassurance was worse than silence. "I won't disappear," he said carefully. "But I won't rush either. I want to do this the right way." Mia nodded slowly. "My mom doesn't like rushing." "That's a good rule," Ryan said. The woman finally spoke. "Mia, I'm just asking. I like knowing things." Her mother sighed softly. "I know." Ryan set his coffee down. "I can start small," he said. "If that helps. Lunches, school pickup, things that don't make promises they can't keep." The woman studied him for a long moment. Presence, she said, not performance. Yes. And consistency. Yes. And if at any point this stops being good for her, I step back. Ryan finished immediately. Mia watched them both, eyes bright with curiosity. You talk funny, she said to Ryan. Like you're in trouble. He smiled faintly. I am. That made her laugh. A real laugh. Brief, unguarded. The sound lodged somewhere deep in his chest. When they left the diner, Mia skipped ahead, kicking at cracks in the sidewalk. Ryan and her mother followed at a slower pace. You don't owe us anything, she said quietly, not looking at him. I know, Ryan replied. But I owe her the truth. She glanced at him. Then truth doesn't fix everything. No, he said, but it gives us a place to start. They reached the building. Mia turned and hugged her mother tightly before looking at Ryan. Will you come back? She asked. Yes, Ryan said, if you want me to. She thought for a moment, then nodded. Okay. It wasn't permission. It was trust. And Ryan knew with a clarity that both steadied and terrified him that earning it would be the hardest work of his life. By Monday morning, the story was no longer his alone. Ryan learned that the way he learned most things now, through silence breaking. His phone began vibrating before sunrise. Messages stacking on top of one another with an urgency that felt almost quaint compared to what sat heavier in his chest. An unscripted moment at a charity event, a delayed schedule, a child, a ring. The facts were incomplete, but speculation never waited for facts. By the time Ryan arrived at his office, the headlines had already begun to harden into something more dangerous than rumor, narrative. He did not read them. Instead, he stood at the window, looking out over the city and listened as his assistant spoke from several feet behind him, careful, measured, trying not to sound alarmed. They're asking questions, she said. Nothing concrete yet, but people noticed you stopped the distribution line. Someone caught video of you kneeling. The girl is not a talking point, Ryan said quietly. There was a pause. Yes, sir, she replied. For years, this would have been the moment he took control, issued statements, redirected attention, drowned curiosity, and calculated generosity. He knew exactly how to make a story disappear. But this story did not belong to the public, and it did not belong to him alone. Clear the afternoon, he said. And cancel the interview on Thursday. Oh, that interview is with. I know who it's with, Ryan said. Cancel it. She hesitated. Your board won't like that. Ryan turned from the window and looked at her fully. They don't have to. She nodded once and left. Ryan sat down at his desk, resting his forearms on the cool surface. For the first time, he felt the familiar pull of strategy lose its grip. This was not something to manage. It was something to live through. His phone buzzed again. A message not from his assistant or his lawyers. Saturday went well. Mia wants to see you again. Wednesday after school. 1 hour. He read the message twice, then set the phone face down and closed his eyes. 1 hour. He could build companies in less time. He could lose fortunes in less time. And yet that single hour felt heavier than any commitment he had ever made. Wednesday arrived with no fanfare. Ryan parked 2 blocks away this time and walked the rest of the distance. He had learned something already. Showing up did not require being seen. Mia was waiting outside when he arrived, her backpack slung over one shoulder, the ring catching the afternoon light as she waved. "You're on time," she said. "Yes," Ryan replied. "I practiced." She grinned at that, then turned as her mother emerged behind her. There was a subtle shift in her posture when she saw Ryan, still cautious, but no longer braced for disappointment. "1 hour," she said. "I understand." Mia tugged at her mother's hand. "Can we go to the library? Miss Carter says Wednesday days." The woman considered this, then nodded. "The library is fine." They walked together, the city moving around them in its usual indifference. Mia filled the space with small observations about a stray cat she'd seen the day before, about a spelling test she'd passed, about how the librarian liked it when kids whispered even outside the building. Ryan listened, not with the performative attention he'd perfected over the years, but with something slower, more deliberate. He found himself memorizing the cadence of her voice, the way she paused to choose words, the careful confidence beneath her curiosity. Inside the library, Mia headed straight for the children's section. She moved with purpose, as if the space belonged to her. The woman settled into a chair nearby with a book she did not open. Ryan followed Mia between the shelves. "This one's my favorite," Mia said, pulling out a worn hardcover. "It's about a girl who fixes broken things." "Does she fix people?" Ryan asked. Mia thought about it. "Not really. She just stays." The answer landed quietly, decisively. They sat on the floor, backs against the shelf. Mia flipped through the book, stopping occasionally to show him pictures. Ryan asked questions. Not leading ones, not probing, just enough to let her know he was there. After a while, Mia looked up. "My mom says you're important," she said. He smiled faintly. "She's being polite." Mia shook her head. "She says you have a lot of influence." Ryan considered the word. That might be true. Does influence mean people listen to you? Mia asked. Yes. Then why didn't you listen before? The question was not sharp. It was sincere. Ryan swallowed. Because I was listening to the wrong things. Mia nodded, satisfied. That happens. When the hour ended, it ended naturally. No clock checking, no reminders. At the door, Mia hugged him without warning, brief, unceremonious, and complete. Then she stepped back as if embarrassed by her own boldness. "See you," she said. Ryan stood there for a moment after they left, the echo of the embrace lingering like a quiet vow. Outside, the world waited, impatient, curious, hungry for explanation. For the first time, Ryan Hale did not rush to meet it. He walked home instead, the city unfolding at a human pace, carrying with him the knowledge that something far more difficult than control had begun. Consistency. By the end of the second week, the city had decided who Ryan Hale was supposed to be. He saw it reflected in glances that lingered too long. In the way conversations paused when he entered a room. In the careful neutrality of headlines that pretended not to speculate while doing exactly that. He was used to attention. What unsettled him was how shallow it felt now, how far removed from the thing that actually mattered. Every Wednesday, He walked Mia home from the library. It became routine quickly, which surprised him. Not the walk itself, but the way his body began to expect it. By Tuesday night, his schedule no longer felt complete without the quiet anticipation of that single hour. He found himself planning around it, protecting it in ways he had never protected anything personal before. Mia noticed. "You don't wear suits anymore," she said one afternoon as they crossed a side street, her backpack bouncing against her back. "I wear them," Ryan replied, "just not when I'm with you." "Why?" He thought for a moment. "Because they make me feel like I'm working. And you don't want to work with me?" she asked. "I want to be present," he said. She considered that, then nodded. "My mom likes being present. She says it's harder than it looks." Her mother walked a few steps behind them, always close enough to hear, far enough to give space. She did not interrupt. She did not direct. She observed the way someone did when they had learned the cost of interference. That afternoon, Mia stopped in front of a small park. It wasn't much. 2 benches, a tired swing set, a patch of grass worn thin by feet and seasons. Children played nearby, their voices rising and falling like waves. "Can we sit for a minute?" Mia asked. Ryan looked at her mother. "1 minute," she said. They sat on a bench that had been painted too many times, the layers thick and uneven. Mia swung her legs, the ring tapping softly against the metal. "People keep looking at you," Mia said. "Yes," Ryan replied. "They do that. Is it because you're rich?" "Sometimes." She squinted. "Do they look at you differently now?" He knew what she meant. He had felt it too. The shift, subtle, but unmistakable, since the charity event. Curiosity sharpened by suspicion, interest laced with judgment. "Yes," he said, "some of them do. Does it bother you?" He considered the question carefully. "It used to. Now I think it's supposed to." Mia nodded, satisfied with that answer, then leaned back against the bench. "My mom says when people stare, it's usually because they don't understand something," she said, "or because they don't want to." Ryan smiled faintly. "Your mom sounds wise." "She is," Mia said without hesitation. She waited a long time. The words were simple. They carried weight. Ryan watched a boy push another child on the swing, counting aloud, careful not to go too high. He thought of waiting. Not the passive kind, but the kind that required endurance, the kind that cost something every day. "Mia," he said quietly. She turned to him. "When you talk about your dad," he continued, "how do you feel?" She frowned slightly, thinking. "Mostly curious. Not angry." She shook her head. "I don't know him. It's hard to be mad at someone you don't know." "I see." Her honesty landed gently, but firmly. "And your mom?" he asked. Mia hesitated. "She doesn't get mad out loud." He nodded. That sounded right. They walked the rest of the way home in companionable silence. At the door, Mia turned and looked up at him. "Are you coming to my school thing?" she asked. "What school thing?" "The open house," she said. "My mom goes every year." Ryan felt his chest tighten. "When is it?" "Friday," Mia replied. "But it's okay if you can't." Ryan met her gaze. "I'll be there. If your mom agrees." Mia grinned and ran inside without waiting for permission. Her mother lingered in the doorway. You don't have to do that, she said quietly. I want to, Ryan replied. She studied him. Wanting is easy. I know, he said. I'm working on the rest. She nodded once. Friday. Then the door closed. That evening, Ryan sat alone in his penthouse, the quiet pressing in from all sides. He stood at the window, looking out over a city that no longer felt like an accomplishment. It felt like a backdrop. His phone buzzed. A message from his board chair, carefully worded, requesting a meeting to discuss recent developments. Ryan read it once, then set the phone aside. There would be time for that. He thought of Mia at her desk, practicing her spelling words. Of her mother filling out forms, signing her name where it had been overlooked too many times. Of the ring still worn, still visible, still a reminder that promises had consequences whether they were kept or not. For years, Ryan had believed redemption was a transaction. You gave enough, did enough, fixed enough. Now he understood it was something else entirely. Redemption was repetition, showing up again and again and again. On Friday, the school hallway buzzed with voices and footsteps. Paper signs pointed parents toward classrooms. Children darted between adults, excited and uncontained. Ryan stood just inside the entrance, suddenly uncertain. Mia spotted him first. You came, she said, grabbing his hand before he could react. Her mother followed, her expression unreadable, but her presence steady. Inside the classroom, Mia showed him her desk, her drawings, her books. She spoke easily, proudly. Her teacher greeted Ryan politely, without recognition, without curiosity. For once, he was grateful. As they left, Mia squeezed his hand. Thanks, she said. For what? For staying, she replied. Ryan felt the truth of it settle deep in his chest. Staying was not a single act. It was a decision renewed daily. The school hallway emptied slowly after the open house. The noise fading into a soft echo that lingered in the corners. Parents drifted out in small clusters. Voices low. Schedules already reclaiming their attention. Mia skipped ahead, her backpack bumping against her hip, energized in a way that came from being seen. Ryan followed a step behind her and her mother, careful not to crowd, attentive to the rhythm they had established. He had learned in these short weeks that proximity was not permission. It was an invitation that could be withdrawn just as quietly as it had been offered. Outside, the late afternoon air was cool and clean. Mia stopped at the curb and turned, her face serious again, the way it became when she had something important to say. Miss Carter says I'm good at explaining things, she announced. I believe her, Ryan said. Mia nodded. She says that's because I listen first. Her mother's mouth curved into the faintest smile. You do. Mia considered this, pleased. I learned it at home. They began walking. Half a block passed in silence before Mia spoke again. Some kids asked if you were my dad, she said. Ryan felt the words settle before responding. What did you say? I said I didn't know yet, Mia replied. Because that's true. Her mother slowed, then stopped. Ryan stopped with her. That's not a question you need to answer for anyone, she said gently to Mia. I know, Mia said. I wasn't bothered. She looked up at Ryan. But are you? The honesty of the question left no room for performance. "I'm not bothered," Ryan said. "I'm aware." Mia accepted that distinction. "Okay." They walked on. At the building, Mia turned and hugged her mother quickly, then hesitated before hugging Ryan, shorter this time, less impulsive, as if she were measuring the shape of something that was becoming familiar. "See you Wednesday," she said. Ryan nodded. "See you Wednesday." The door closed behind them. Ryan stood on the sidewalk for a moment longer than necessary, letting the day settle into him. By Monday, the board meeting could no longer be postponed. The room was glass and steel. The table long enough to seat power comfortably. Faces he had known for years studied him with a new kind of interest, measured, restrained, cautious. They did not ask about Mia. Not directly. They asked about optics, about risk, about timing. Ryan listened. When it was his turn to speak, he did not reach for the language that had always served him well. He spoke plainly. "There are parts of my life I kept separate," he said. That separation was convenient. It was also wrong. A murmur passed through the room. "I'm not asking this board to manage my personal decisions," he continued. "I'm telling you they exist and they will not be hidden." Someone cleared their throat. "The foundation will continue its work," Ryan said, with transparency. "And if this becomes complicated?" another asked. Ryan met their gaze. "Then we will be honest about why." The meeting ended without resolution. That too was a first. On Wednesday, Ryan arrived at the library 5 minutes early. Mia was already there, sitting cross-legged on the carpet, reading with the focus of someone who had chosen to be exactly where she was. "You're late," she said without looking up. "I'm early," Ryan replied. She glanced at the clock. "You're early enough." They read together. Mia corrected him when he mispronounced a character's name. He accepted it with a humility that surprised them both. At the end of the hour, Mia closed her book and looked at him thoughtfully. "My mom says people don't change because they feel bad," she said. "They change because they keep choosing the hard thing." Ryan nodded. "Your mom is right. Is this the hard thing?" Mia asked. He met her eyes. "Yes." She smiled then, small and satisfied. "Good." That night, Ryan sat alone again, but the quiet no longer felt empty. It felt purposeful. He thought of repetition, of Wednesdays and Fridays in the space between. He thought of the ring, still worn, still visible, no longer a secret. Change, he was learning, was not a speech or a headline. It was a pattern. By the third week, Ryan Hale understood something he had never learned in any negotiation or acquisition. Time did not move faster when you wanted redemption. It slowed. Every small decision stretched, weighted with consequence. What to say, when to speak, when to remain silent. He had spent years believing leadership meant filling every gap with action. Mia was teaching him that restraint carried its own discipline. The first test came quietly. It was a Tuesday evening when his phone rang with a number he did not recognize. He almost ignored it. Almost. "Mr. Hale," the voice said when he answered. Female. Professional. "This is Rachel Donovan with the Ledger. I'm working on a piece about your foundation." Ryan closed his eyes. "Yes. There have been questions," she continued carefully, about a child seen with you at a recent event. I wanted to give you the opportunity to comment. Opportunity. The word tasted bitter. What kind of comment? He asked. Clarification. Context. Ryan pictured Mia sitting cross-legged on the library carpet, sounding out words with quiet determination. He pictured her mother watching from a distance, never interrupting, never inserting herself into a narrative that did not belong to her. There is no comment, Ryan said. A pause. Respectfully, sir, silence creates its own story. I'm aware, he replied. But this one isn't yours to tell. Another pause, longer this time. Understood. The call ended. Ryan set the phone down and exhaled. For the first time, he did not feel the urge to control the fallout. He felt something steadier. Resolve. On Wednesday, Mia greeted him with a question. Why do reporters write things about people they don't know? She asked as they walked toward the library. They think knowing pieces is the same as knowing the whole, Ryan replied. She frowned. That seems lazy. He smiled. Sometimes it is. They sat at their usual spot between the shelves. Mia pulled out her book, but she didn't open it right away. She watched him instead. You look tired, she said. I am, he admitted. My mom says tired people sometimes tell the truth by accident, Mia said. Ryan laughed quietly. She's very observant. Mia leaned closer. Are you scared? He considered lying. He didn't. Yes. Of what? He thought of headlines, of boardrooms, of carefully constructed lives that did not leave room for mistakes. Of hurting you, he said. Mia blinked, surprised. You didn't hurt me. The simplicity of her answer unsettled him more than anger would have. You were gone, she added thoughtfully. That hurt my mom more. Ryan nodded. I know. They read in silence after that. At the end of the hour, Mia closed her book and looked at him again. My mom says you can't fix yesterday, she said. But you can decide what tomorrow looks like. Ryan felt something tighten behind his eyes. She's right. Friday arrived with rain. The open house energy had faded, replaced by routine. Ryan walked Mia home under a shared umbrella, careful to match her pace. She stepped around puddles, narrating her progress as if it were a game. At the door, Mia paused. Can you come in? She asked. Ryan looked to her mother. The woman hesitated just long enough for him to notice. Then she nodded. Inside, the apartment smelled faintly of laundry soap and something warm baking. Mia kicked off her shoes and disappeared into her room, returning moments later with a drawing clutched in both hands. I made this, she said, holding it out. It was simple. 3 figures, one taller, one smaller, one in between. They were holding hands. Ryan swallowed. Is this? He began. It's S, Mia said. Maybe. He nodded, unable to speak. Her mother watched quietly from the kitchen doorway. Mia handed him the drawing, then ran off again, humming. Ryan stood there, the paper trembling slightly in his hands. That's a big step for her, the woman said. I know, Ryan replied. I won't take it lightly. She studied him. Good. They stood in silence, the weight of the moment settling without pressure. I was contacted by the press, Ryan said finally. I didn't say anything. Her gaze sharpened. Thank you. I meant it when I said I wouldn't rush this, he added. I won't use her story to manage my image. She nodded once. That matters. Mia returned, dragging her backpack behind her. Can he come to my recital? She asked suddenly. Her mother sighed. Mia, it's just singing. Mia continued. Everyone comes. Ryan felt his chest tighten again. If you want me to, he said. Mia beamed. I do. Her mother looked between them, then nodded slowly. All right. Ryan left soon after, the drawing folded carefully in his coat pocket. That night he stood at his window again. The city blurred by rain. He thought of tomorrow not as a problem to solve, but as a responsibility to honor. For years he had believed power was the ability to decide outcomes. Now he was learning that the hardest power to wield was patience. He took the drawing out once more, smoothing the creases. Maybe. The word felt honest. The recital was held in a school auditorium that smelled faintly of dust and floor polish. The kind of place where generations of small performances had left behind echoes of applause and nerves. Folding chairs filled the floor in careful rows. Parents murmuring to one another as children darted between legs and backpacks. Ryan arrived early. He stood near the back at first, unsure where to sit, hands clasped loosely in front of him. He did not bring flowers. He did not bring gifts. He brought himself, which felt like enough and not nearly enough all at once. Mia spotted him before he saw her. There, she whispered loudly to the girl beside her. Pointing. Ryan smiled despite himself. She was seated in the second row, feet dangling, the ring catching the stage lights as she adjusted the hem of her dress. When her eyes met his, she gave a small, deliberate wave. Not exuberant, intentional. He returned it. Her mother sat beside her, posture straight, hands folded in her lap. She glanced back once, just long enough to confirm Ryan was there, then faced forward again. There was no expression of gratitude on her face. No relief, only acknowledgement. The program began with the usual uneven rhythm of children finding their places. Some sang too loudly, some too softly, some forgot words and laughed. Ryan watched it all with an attention that surprised him. He had attended galas where millions were raised in a single night and felt nothing. Here, his chest tightened with every off-key note. When Mia's group stepped onto the stage, his breath caught. She stood in the middle, shoulders squared, eyes scanning the audience until they found him. For a brief moment, she faltered. Then she saw her mother's profile, calm and steady, and something settled in her expression. The music started. Mia sang clearly, carefully. Not the loudest, not the boldest, but present. Every word shaped with intention. Ryan found himself leaning forward as if proximity might somehow communicate what he could not yet say. When it ended, the applause came fast and full. Ryan clapped until his hands stung. Though Mia did not look at him this time, she looked at her mother, who nodded once, pride contained but unmistakable. Afterward, the lobby filled with noise and motion. Parents gathered children, offering praise and hugs. Mia ran toward them, stopping just short of colliding with Ryan. You came, she said again as if she were still testing the reality of it. I told you I would, he replied. She nodded, satisfied, then turned to her mother. He heard me sing. I know, her mother said. She looked at Ryan. Thank you for coming. It was the first time she had thanked him. They stood together awkwardly, three people sharing a moment that did not yet have a name. Around them, the world moved on without noticing. Can we get ice cream? Mia asked suddenly. Her mother sighed. It's a school night. Please. Mia pressed. Everyone's going. The woman hesitated, then looked at Ryan. He waited. All right, she said finally. One scoop. Mia whooped softly, grabbing both their hands before either could object. The ice cream shop was bright and loud, the kind of place where decisions felt monumental and consequences were sugar-based. Mia deliberated seriously before choosing vanilla with sprinkles. Ryan ordered coffee-flavored ice cream without thinking, then laughed when Mia wrinkled her nose. That's a grown-up flavor, she said. It is, he agreed. They sat at a small table by the window. Mia ate with focus, sprinkles dotting the corner of her mouth. Ryan watched her, memorizing the ordinariness of the moment. This is nice, Mia said. Yes, Ryan replied. It is. Her mother stirred her spoon slowly. Moments like this don't erase the past, she said quietly. I know, Ryan said. I'm not trying to erase it. She studied him. Good. Mia looked between them. Are you arguing? No, her mother said. We're agreeing carefully. Mia accepted this explanation and returned to her ice cream. When they parted outside the building, Mia hugged Ryan again, longer this time. Thanks for coming, she said into his jacket. Thank you for letting me, he replied. She pulled back and looked at him. Seriously, you're doing okay, he smiled. That means a lot. That night, Ryan sat alone once more. But the loneliness had changed shape. It was no longer hollow. It was attentive, waiting. He thought of the auditorium, of Mia's steady voice, of her mother's nod. He thought of how trust was built, not through declarations, but through repetition and restraint. His phone buzzed. A new message from his board chair, more direct this time. They wanted answers. They wanted certainty. Ryan set the phone down without responding. For the first time, he understood that certainty was a privilege, not a right. He had chosen something fragile, something that could not be defended by contracts or influence, and he would have to protect it anyway. The pressure arrived quietly, the way it always did when something real threatened a carefully maintained image. It showed up first as distance. Invitations that stopped coming. Calls that were delayed just long enough to signal displeasure. Then it sharpened into concern, polite, professional, insistent. Ryan felt it most clearly on a Thursday afternoon when his board chair requested a private meeting without the usual preamble. No agenda, no context. Just a time and a place. He did not ask questions. The room was smaller than the main boardroom. Windowless. Designed for conversations that were meant to stay contained. 3 people waited for him when he arrived. Familiar faces. Trusted ones. Once, Ryan, the chair began, folding his hands on the table. We need to talk about risk. Ryan sat unhurried. Go on. There's speculation, another board member said. It's gaining traction. A child. A personal matter. You understand how this can be framed. I do, Ryan replied. And yet you've chosen not to address it. That's correct. The chair leaned back. Your silence is being interpreted as confirmation. Ryan met his gaze. It's not theirs to interpret. A pause followed, measured, calculating. This foundation represents more than you, the chair said carefully. It represents stability, trust. If your personal life becomes a distraction, then the work becomes harder. Ryan finished. I know. And that doesn't make the truth negotiable. One of the board members shifted uncomfortably. No one is asking you to lie. Then what are you asking? Ryan said. Another pause. We're asking you to manage exposure, the chair said. To create distance until things settle. Ryan felt the familiar reflex rise, the instinct to compartmentalize, to protect the whole by sacrificing the inconvenient part. It would have been easy. He could have nodded, agreed, promised discretion. He thought of Mia's drawing folded carefully in his coat pocket, of her voice on the stage, steady and clear, of her mother's quiet boundary. Presence, not performance. No, Ryan said. The word landed flat, undeniable. The chair frowned. You're choosing a personal narrative over institutional responsibility. I'm choosing accountability, Ryan replied. For once, silence stretched, brittle now. If this escalates, the chair said, there will be consequences. I understand, Ryan said. There already are. He stood, signaling the end of the conversation. None of them stopped him. Outside, the city moved as it always had, indifferent to private reckonings. Ryan walked without direction for several blocks, letting the tension drain from his shoulders. He did not feel triumphant. He felt resolved. His phone buzzed. Mia had learned how to text. Are you coming tomorrow? Ryan smiled despite himself. Yes, he typed. If you still want me to. The reply came quickly. I do. Friday evening arrived with a low sky and the promise of rain. Ryan arrived at the apartment with groceries. This time not extravagant, not symbolic, just practical. Milk, bread, apples. He hesitated at the door, then knocked. Mia answered. You remembered, she said, eyeing the bags. I'm learning, Ryan replied. Her mother took the groceries without comment and moved to the kitchen. Mia followed, narrating what she wanted to make as if Ryan were already part of the routine. They ate together. The conversation light, ordinary, school, weather, a spelling test. Ryan listened more than he spoke. After dinner, Mia disappeared into her room, returning with the ring held carefully between her fingers. My mom says you should know something, she said. Ryan's chest tightened. Okay. She climbed onto the chair beside him, small legs tucked underneath her. She says the ring wasn't just a promise. It was her proof. Proof of what? Ryan asked. That she mattered, Mia said simply. Even when people laughed. Even when she had me and everyone said she'd made a mistake. Ryan closed his eyes. She never told me to give it back, Mia continued. She said if I ever met my dad, I should let him see it. So he would remember. Ryan swallowed. I remember. Mia studied his face. Good. Her mother stood in the doorway. Lee.